I had been in country 4 months, and by that time, if you stayed in Scout 6 months, you got a choice of duty afterwards. So I was 4 months in. I had trained I was already training new pilots to work the AO. And one of the guys that I trained, McIntosh, who ended up being one hell of a pilot, had taken 50 fire out by LZ Jamie. And LZ Jamie was in the heart of defoliated country, which we call Marlboro country. And every time I was up there, I always got into contact. And so Lloyd and I and the observer, who had been with us now for about 5 flights, and I were flying back. We had been working up north in an area and really had no contact, checked out several bunker positions and previous sites where contact had been. And we're actually looking to see if we could find any rice caches as they were stored off in the jungle. And on the way back, we were flying along and having fun with the NVA Air Force. And the NVA Air Force in our mind were these big, huge black birds that had a white kind of V where their feathers came together, where the wings came together. And the idea was to be far enough away from them to hit them with a chunker, a HE round. Now you wanted to be far enough away, but we never did. We could never get them, and the chunker fell into the ground. It exploded. You have to remember we were in a free fire zone. Okay, everybody out there could shoot, and so could we. So, anyways, we're coming back, and I get a call from operations that said we've had a scout ship take a 50 fire out by LZ Jamie, and I guess there was nobody else wanted the mission. And so I said, I didn't check with the crew. I said, yeah, we've got good crew, we'll take it. So we came back in, refueled, and Whiteside was going to, I thought was going with me. As we're pulling out of the revetment and going down, we had an L-shaped flight line. Scouts were on the short leg, and the Cobras and Hueys were on the long leg. So I got up out of the revetment and just rolled it down and called I was on the roll, and I turned that corner and shoot, I'd already be doing 60, 80 knots and just screaming down there. I wanted to get up to altitude before I broke the perimeter, because sometimes they would be waiting at the end of the perimeter and taking shots at us. So I got up to altitude, and on the way up, I got a call that said 17. That was my call sign. This is 3, and that's the operations officer, Anderson, and that kind of surprised me, because I wasn't expecting him to be in the front seat. I mean, in the rear seat. And the front seat was Lieutenant Bowden. Both of them Hello Greek pilots. And I had requested before we got there that they put in Artie and have fast movers come in, and we would follow in as the dust was settling, where their heads were still down. Well, this again is a young pilot's opinion that the Army can be so time specific. The Artie was in the fast movers long before we got there, so they had already reset up. But we pulled in around LZ Jamie and headed out to the site, and it was maybe a 10-minute flight, something like that. And so again, it's some defoliated area that had grown up into brush and stuff that was probably 15 feet high, something like that. And came across the area that had been pounded, doing well over 100 knots. I mean, I was screaming across there. and I could tell we didn't get anything. 3 said, well, take another look. And so I swung around to the right and came around, and there was a kind of a thumb-shaped area that was at the far end of this where I was working. And so I came around this thumb and was coming down. It wasn't downwind. I don't think we had much wind area, and we're looking for these guys. And the next thing I know, I said, "Oh no!" And I was slammed against and twisted against the bird in my seat, and thought I was dead. The bird, the door gunner said the bird actually almost stopped in the air, and when it hit me through my right leg, my right arm and elbow, and then hit my chicken plate and went down and followed my pelvis around and went out the back of went out my back about that far from my spine, and went through the armor plate into the back of my seat and blew a hole in the bulkhead about that big. And that shrapnel ended up in Lloyd's hand and groin, and it left his fingers in op. And we were at an attitude kind of like this, where this is before I got hit, and then we went that way. And when I figured out that I wasn't dead, I slapped the cyclic up. But before we go any farther with that, I must tell you, going out on this mission, they used to have a closing for the TV stations at midnight, and it was one of an Air Force pilot that was flying across the sky, and part of it was, and I touched the face of God or hand of God. Okay, so that's what's going in my mind on this mission, and so I go through saying my prayers and everything, and I take my hands off the controls. I go, "You've got it." Take my hands off the controls and light a cigarette. And when you say "you've got it," the person in the other seat who has controls is supposed to take over the controls. So I'm just smoking the cigarette, and the bird's going to stay in trib for a while. I mean, it's not any big thing. Finally, I get on and I just scream at David, and I said, "Damn it, when I say you've got it, you get your hands on the controls." So I let him get his hands on the cyclic and collective, but not the pedals. And I continued to smoke and had that, and let him fly for a few minutes straight and level. Enough time that he thought that he had confidence to do it, but short enough that he didn't start to move the controls. So that's what we're going into this with. So I get hit, and the bird is on its side. I slap it back, and I can't move either right leg or right arm. So I called the hybrid and said, I've lost use of my right arm. And then I went to work with Ham. That's what we called him, Ham. And he was on the controls, had the cyclic and the collective, and I pointed at the far end of where we were working was a small dish bowl there. And I knew they could see me and that I was hit. And they would probably thinking we were going to crash because we were not taking any more fire. And we were only, I don't know, maybe 75 feet above the ground. Okay, maybe less than that. I mean, we weren't that high. And so gradually we went over to this area as if we were going to go in it. And I pointed out the bubble so they were watching that they could see that's where I was going. And what there was at the other side of the small bowl was a group of tall trees. And I figured that could give us some cover to get out of there. So as we came down to that area where we were going to land, I told him to pull in power. And as he pulled in power, and I helped him a little bit, pulled in a little power, and without having the pedals, it turned us left. And then we gained altitude, and we were still flying above the treetops at that point when we got out of there. But everything was going real slow. I knew exactly what he was going to do. You know, they gave us a heading, and on the RMI it works counterintuitive to how you think the compass is going to run. And so I was prepared for him to go in the wrong way, got him corrected, and Lloyd says, he's in the back, he later said, he says, we were all over that sky. He says, I said, Lloyd, I said, I didn't care. I mean, it's a wide highway. We could go right, left, up, but not down. And I said, he didn't go down. And so we're making it back to LZ Jamie, and we come across the perimeter wire, and Lloyd is throwing out all the ammo, the grenades, everything. He's getting it off the ship. And Ham is still flying now. Now we're doing straight and level. And my idea was we'd make a running landing on the far side of the LZ. Except when we came up to that area, it was all full of moguls. I mean, there's no way you could land there. And I'm starting to get a little weak. I've lost quite a little blood at this time. So as we're coming down, remember Pittman had flown some, and he goes, pull pitch. Now, as Lloyd would explain it, he could see the whiskers on the guys in the fire support base looking at us. He yelled, pull pitch. Ham sucked in all the power, but he didn't have pedals to counteract the torque. And we spun up. Lloyd said about 3 times. All I remember is my left foot instinctively went and hit the pedal. And we stopped, I don't know, 1,200 feet, I don't know where we were at. And we were facing right back towards the fire support base. So we're at that at kind of a high hover. Kind of, hell, we were at a high hover. And I said to Ham, I clicked there, I says, you know, we're going to get out of this. I said, you put both feet on the pedals, and you just keep even pressure. If one goes back, let it go back, but you just keep equal pressure on both pedals, and if they move, don't worry about it. And so I had my left foot can control both pedals that way. And I said, you take the collect of the power, and you slowly let it out. And I said, we're gonna go and land at that point down there where there was a pile of brush. I said, we're gonna land on my side of that brush. And I said, we're not gonna go forward it, we're gonna go down at an angle, slide down, so I can see better. And so that's what we did. And we got down to, and I was gonna go right to the ground, no hover, just set it right to the ground. We got close, and Lloyd goes, pull pitch. Well, this time I had the foot, and I took and I dumped that collective, the cyclic. I pulled it all the way over to the left and back, and dumped all that lift. And we went up a little bit and came back down, but the one skid stayed on the ground. And then we were right by, I don't think we were 10, 15 yards from a bunker, and guys came out and got me out of the bird, and Lloyd came up and shut it down, shut the fuel off, and then we went in, and they started shooting me up with morphine just in time. And Bowen had landed, or 3 had landed, and Bowen came out and asked me if I knew where they were, and I said, yeah, I pointed out where they were. Just before we landed this last time, I could hear over the radio, Whiteside was on his way out without having a front seat driver, and everybody had scrambled. Everybody was coming. So I was in this bunker, and they finally got the medevac bird came in and loaded me in a medevac bird, and the pilot turns around, the right seat turns around and taps my stretcher and gives me a thumbs up, and it happened to be Knight, one of the guys I was in flight school with.